A priest who is one of the finest public speakers, one of the greatest preachers I've ever heard, one time said this. He said, "No one knows priests as well as other priests. A priest knows when they meet a good priest. A priest knows when they meet a great priest." My brothers and sisters, do you know whom nearly every single Catholic priest in this diocese believes who the finest priest in the diocese is? If you ask nearly any priest, they would tell you Monsignor Ed Kavanaugh. Probably many of you know him or know of him. Many people regard him as a living saint, and I am one of them. Monsignor Kavanaugh, he probably has the record for all time in the Catholic Church for being at one single parish for the longest period of time. He has been out at St. Rose on Franklin Boulevard since the day of his ordination nearly 65 years ago. He is approaching 90 years old in the same parish. A few years ago, when all the priests get together on Holy Thursday, the day that our Lord instituted the sacred priesthood, the day He said to His apostles, "Do this in memory of me," and that sacrifice that has been handed on for all ages through the sacred priesthood. All the priests get together, and each year we celebrate those who are holding a jubilee year. If a priest has been ordained 25 years, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. Monsignor Kavanaugh was celebrating his 60th anniversary as a priest. They start at the 25-year mark and they go up. And when they'd announce each priest, he'd stand up, everyone would clap, good friends might shout out, "Oh, hooray!" When they got to Monsignor Kavanaugh, you know what happened? Every priest in the room stood up and gave a thunderous applause for several minutes. Tears were streaming down my cheeks. He is the most highly regarded, most well-respected priest in the diocese. Why? Because he has fulfilled the words that we heard today from St. Paul. He has made himself a slave to all, so as to win as many as possible. He has become all things to all, to save at least some. The year before my ordination, I was out at Sutter Hospital downtown, and I had to do a chaplaincy program in preparation for ordination. And my responsibility was to each day go and visit all the Catholic patients in the hospital. I cannot tell you how many times over the course of 9 months I would go into a patient's room, I would talk to a Catholic, and they'd immediately ask me, "Father, do you know Monsignor Kavanaugh?" And almost every time I was asked that question, it came from the lips of someone who was poor. You could tell someone who had lived a hard life. Maybe had even been homeless at times. Might have had a substance abuse addiction or struggle. And I heard over and over, "Father, if it wasn't for Monsignor Kavanaugh, my siblings and I wouldn't have been able to go to high school. If Monsignor Kavanaugh hadn't come to my parents' home in a time of trial, they wouldn't have stayed together. Monsignor Kavanaugh found my brother a job when he got out of prison. It saved his life." My dentist, a good Catholic man, probably about 6 years old, he grew up in Monsignor Kavanaugh's parish. And not too long ago, I was getting my teeth cleaned, and he always tells me stories about Monsignor Kavanaugh. He said that when he was a young student, so Monsignor Kavanaugh helped to raise this kid, celebrated his wedding, has baptized his own children. He said that when Monsignor Kavanaugh was a young priest, he realized that in order to get close to the families, one of the best things he could do was become the bus driver for school. So he went out and got his driver's license as a bus driver so that each day he would pick up the kids for school, he'd see where they lived, he'd meet their parents, get to know them, he entered into their lives. He has been responsible for more priestly ordinations than any priest in the diocese. And not because he's out promoting vocations, but simply by the witness of his life. There are numerous priests in this diocese who would say, "I am a priest today because I was an altar server for Monsignor Kavanaugh. Because I went to the school that Monsignor Kavanaugh oversaw, and his example was so profound that it changed my life and made me want to become a priest. He has opened an orphanage. He has founded a home for single mothers who are pregnant. He is the head of the Women's Council for the diocese. He's probably the head of about 50 organizations in the diocese. A few days ago, I met with the founder of Catholic Radio, Doug Sherman. I believe the first Catholic radio station in the diocese was here in Sacramento. He had founded one in Reno and wanted to bring Catholic radio to California. In a few weeks, they're going to be opening up their 25th station down in San Diego. So this man lives up in Lake Tahoe. So not too familiar with the Sacramento area. So he's saying, gosh, who would be able to help me if I want to get this radio station off the ground? So he's talked to some friends in Sacramento. What was he told? If you want to do anything in Sacramento, anything big, you talk to Monsignor Kavanaugh. So he calls him up. He had to raise over $1 million to found this radio station. My grandfather knows Monsignor Kavanaugh well. Monsignor Kavanaugh calls him and said, Dave, I got to raise over $1 million. I don't have time to do all the footwork. You got to join me in it. I'll get the donors. You follow up. Okay. What'd they do? Monsignor Kavanaugh goes, he picks up my grandfather. They drive out to the Maloofs, the owners of the Kings, drive to their office, and on the way my grandfather says, Monsignor, did you make an appointment? No. I'll just show up. It'll be fine. Okay, they get to the Maloof's office. Monsignor Kavanaugh walks in the door, just kind of waves at the secretary as he walks past her into Mr. Maloof's office. She picks up the phone and says, Monsignor Kavanaugh's here. He goes into the office. Mr. Maloof goes, oh, man, Monsignor, what do you need now? There's some great work being done for the Catholic Church. You're a good Catholic boy. I need $100,000. What? Monsignor, you know how much money that is? I'm helping you get to heaven. I need $100,000. I need it now. Whips out his checkbook, writes a check for $100,000. They go to Bishop Wiegand's residence. He had promised $25,000 of his own personal money. They get to his house. They go in. My grandfather's with him. Bishop Wiegand says, Monsignor Kavanaugh, I've been thinking more about it, and that's a lot of money. It's really something I should run by the priest council. Get their approval. Is this really something I ought to be doing? Monsignor Kavanaugh says, the heck with the priest council. It's your money. Sign the check, Bishop. $25,000. Monsignor Kavanaugh is a hero. In the late 1990s, at his parish, so his parish, almost any time you read of some great event going on, it's being held out at St. Rose. They were holding a Santa's breakfast at their school. He did not know until the day of, when the breakfast is about to begin, and Santa Claus is going to take pictures with the children, that somehow the principal of the school had contacted Governor Gray Davis to do a promotional event, a charities activity, to show Gray Davis working with kids in an orphanage. Monsignor's secretary tells him that he runs over to the parish gym just as Gray Davis is driving onto the lot. Gray Davis gets out of his car, meets Monsignor Kavanaugh. Monsignor Kavanaugh goes, Mr. Davis, I'm very, very sorry. There must have been some mistake. We are not able to welcome you today. Gray Davis says, what? This has been on the calendar for months. I traveled hours to get here. It's just going to take a little bit of time, half an hour. I'm really sorry to have wasted your time. There was a miscommunication. Gray Davis starts to get angry and begins to argue with him. Monsignor Kavanaugh looked him right in the eyes and said, Gray Davis, if it had been up to you, most of these children in this orphanage would have been aborted. This conversation is over. About that time, he discovered that he had stomach cancer. A good friend of mine ran into him at some public event. Monsignor Calvin, how you doing? Well, just got back from the doctor's office. Pray for me. I've somehow gotten stomach cancer. Monsignor, of course. A few years go by where he doesn't see Monsignor. About 5 years later, he runs into him again. Monsignor Calvin was doing well. He goes up to him, Monsignor, whatever happened with the cancer? Did you have an operation? Did you have to go through chemotherapy? Oh, no, nothing like that. Well, what'd you do? How'd you be cured? Well, I don't know. I never went back to the doctor's office. My friend of mine says to him, what? He says, well, I told the good Lord, if you want me to die, I'll die. If you want me to live, I'll live. I leave it up to you, but I don't have time to go back to the doctors. I got work to do. How has he had such a tremendous impact as a priest, touching the lives of thousands upon thousands? He entered into people's lives. He wanted to be all things for all people and meet them where they were at. My brothers and sisters, how did God save the world? How did He redeem us? He sent His Son to become one of us. And our Lord Jesus Christ became friends with the apostles. He ate at the home of sinners. He went fishing with His disciples. He attended the wedding feast of friends, so that the world might know how much God loves us, that we might open our hearts to receive His salvation. And all the saints and all the holy men and women, all the faithful disciples down through the ages have sought to imitate that example by meeting people where they're at. St. John Bosco, in order to attract the youth off the street, he learned magic tricks. Pope John Paul II would go on canoe trips with young people. He founded a reading group for married couples, another group for intellectuals, that academics might come closer to the faith. My Uncle Alan, he helped the Missionaries of Charity found a house in our diocese. When they came, he's a contractor, helped them get this house, did all the basic repairs, maintenance work in the house. But he noticed the house was shabby as can be because the sisters, they want to live in the poorest of poor sections wherever they are in the world. Any city they're in, they want to be with the poor. And Alan's looking around the house, and the windows are 35 years old, the carpets are stained, there's no insulation. Oh, sister, I can get a friend of mine to donate carpet. I can get another friend to do your windows. The superior would refuse every offer he made. He said, he's getting frustrated. Sister, this stuff would be free. Do you realize what you're missing out on? The sister looked at him and she said, Alan, how will the poor feel comfortable with us if we are not poor ourselves? A good buddy of mine, a priest, is a high school chaplain. So he works out, he plays sports. He's a little more liberal with the music and the films that he watches so that he can relate to the young people. These are the opening words of the second reading from St. Paul today. Brothers and sisters, if I preach the gospel, this is no reason for me to boast. For an obligation has been imposed on me. And woe to me if I do not preach it. My brothers and sisters, that same obligation has been imposed on every single one of us. And it's not an obligation that's a burden, it's the obligation that is our joy. That is our responsibility, it's part of our Christian vocation. Let us ask for the grace that we might learn how to be all things for all people in the situations in our lives, in every relationship, that some might be saved,